I'm Vera a 32-year-old diesel mechanic in Bozeman, Montana, where the mountains loom like silent judges over my grease-stained hands. 3 days before Thanksgiving, my mother's voice sliced through the phone, sharp as a socket wrench. "Vera, your work is a stain on our family's image. Stay away this year." The words landed like a dropped engine block, heavy and final. My sister, Eliza, was bringing her tech millionaire boyfriend Nathan to our family's polished suburban home. To ensure a flawless impression, Eliza had spread lies about my unstable career, painting me as a drifter who fixed trucks for pocket change. I stood frozen in my small garage, the scent of motor oil clinging to my flannel shirt, my toolbox open like a confession. I'd already bought a leather-bound journal for Mom, etched with her initials, and a hand-carved chess set for Dad, who taught me to strategize on a board before I ever touched a wrench. I'd swapped shifts at the shop, sacrificing sleep to be there, to sit at the table I'd always fought to belong at. But Eliza's whispers had turned me into an outcast, and Mom's words sealed the verdict. The betrayal stung deeper than the November chill creeping through my drafty windows. I didn't shout or plead. I swallowed the hurt, my throat tight as a rusted bolt, and said nothing. The phone went silent, and I stood alone, the hum of my old fridge the only sound in my small house on the edge of town. Outside, snow dusted the gravel drive where my battered pickup sat, its 250,000 miles a testament to my own endurance. I'd spent years proving my worth, not just in the shop, but in the quiet hours before dawn, building something no one in my family could see. They didn't know about the $2.5 million I'd tucked away, earned through years of discipline and investments no one bothered to ask about. They saw only the grease, the ponytail, the steel-toed boots, not the woman who'd rebuilt herself from the ground up. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the gifts from Mom and Dad untouched in their wrapping. The weight of their rejection pressed against my chest, but beneath it, a spark of defiance flickered. I wasn't the failure they painted me as. I'd built a life, a home, a fortune, all without their approval. Yet the question lingered like exhaust fumes. If they couldn't see me now, would they ever? The answer wasn't clear, but the ache was real, and it drove me to keep moving, to keep building, even as their words echoed in my mind. What happened next would unravel everything: secrets, lies, and the fragile ties that bound us. 5 days after Thanksgiving, my family would come knocking, their faces pale with regret, their motives tangled with greed. But that's a story for those who stay to hear it. Stick around to see how a woman they called a stain turned their world upside down. And if you're moved by stories of grit and redemption, hit that subscribe button for more tales that cut through the noise, delivered fresh to your feed. This is only the beginning. The snow kept falling outside my window, blanketing Bozeman in a hush that felt like a dare. I didn't know then that the quiet would soon shatter, that the family who pushed me out would come crawling back, not for love, but for what I'd hidden beneath my calloused hands. The truth was coming, and it would burn brighter than any holiday light. The phone call lingered like the ache of a bruised knuckle, raw and unyielding. I stood in my Bozeman garage, the cold seeping through the concrete floor, my hand still gripping the phone as if it could retract my mother's words. Eliza's lies had painted me as a failure, a drifter who scraped by fixing trucks, unfit for the polished glow of her Thanksgiving table. I'd heard the rumors through a mutual friend at the shop, whispers that I was unstable, my career a dead end, my life a cautionary tale. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected, a blade twisting in a wound I long tried to ignore. I'd rearranged my shifts, sacrificing sleep to make time for a family dinner I was no longer welcome at. The leather-bound journal for Mom, its edges embossed with her initials, sat on my kitchen counter, next to Dad's chess set, carved from walnut by a local artisan. I imagined him smiling, moving a knight across the board, remembering our old games. But those gifts, like my efforts, were now just relics of a hope I'd clung to too long. I didn't call back to argue or beg. Silence was my armor, forged over years of being the odd one out in a family that prized perfection over truth. My childhood flickered through my mind unbidden, like a grainy film reel. At 16, I'd saved for months to buy my first toolbox, a sturdy red case I'd hidden under my bed. Mom found it one spring afternoon, her face twisting as if I'd brought home something shameful. She smashed it with a hammer, splintering the lock, screaming that no daughter of hers would throw her life away on a man's job. I'd stood there, fist clenched, as Dad watched from the doorway, saying nothing. That memory burned now, as fresh as the snow piling outside my window, blanketing Bozeman in a quiet that felt more like judgment than peace. I walked to my kitchen, the floorboards creaking under my boots, and sank into a chair. The house was small, its walls scuffed from years of my repairs, but it was mine, bought with money I'd earned and invested, with a discipline no one in my family suspected. The $2.5 million in my portfolio was a secret I'd guarded fiercely, not out of shame, but because I knew the truth would shift their glaze, not to respect, but to greed. I'd learned that lesson early, watching them fawn over Eliza's every achievement, while my certifications, my promotions, my rebuilt engines went unnoticed. Yet the pain of their dismissal wasn't just in the exclusion, it was in the realization that I'd still hoped for their approval. I'd carried that hope like a worn tool, useless but too familiar to discard. Outside, the Montana sky darkened, the mountains looming like silent witnesses to my solitude. I could have driven to their house, pounded on the door, demanded they see me for who I was. But I stayed put, the hum of my old furnace the only sound breaking the stillness. Something was shifting inside me, a resolve hardening like steel under heat. What came next would test that resolve in ways I couldn't yet imagine. My family's world was about to crack open, their carefully curated image shattered by truths they'd never bothered to seek. Stick around to see how the lies they told about me led to their own unraveling. If stories of resilience and hidden strength resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more tales that cut through the surface, delivered straight to your feed. The morning of Thanksgiving broke over Bozeman with a stillness that felt like the world was holding its breath. Snow draped the rooftops, softening the edges of my quiet street, but my house sat heavy with absence. No laughter spilled from the kitchen, no clatter of pans or scent of roasting turkey filled the air. I lay in bed longer than usual, staring at the ceiling, the weight of my family's rejection settling like frost on my bones. Eventually, I dragged myself up, pulled on a faded hoodie, and shuffled to the kitchen. The leather-bound journal and chess set still sat on the counter, their wrapping paper pristine, untouched, a silent rebuke. I made coffee, black and bitter, and scrambled 2 eggs, the sizzle of the pan the only sound in the house. Outside, the Montana sky was a pale gray, the mountains standing sentinel, indifferent to my solitude. By noon, I couldn't sit still any longer. I grabbed my toolbox, its weight familiar in my hand, and drove my pickup through the snow-dusted streets to Mrs. Callahan's farm on the edge of town. She was a widow, her fields fallow, her old tractor coughing like a smoker's lungs. She'd left a voicemail 2 days earlier, her voice frail but warm, asking if I could take a look before the winter storms hit. When I arrived, she greeted me at the door,
her eyes crinkling with the kindness that felt like a lifeline. She didn't ask why I was working on a holiday, just pointed to the tractor in the barn and set a mug of hot cider on a workbench. The tractor's fuel line was clogged, a simple fix, but I lingered, tightening bolts, checking the oil, letting the rhythm of the work steady my pulse. Mrs. Callahan hovered nearby, telling stories of her late husband who'd once raced that tractor in a county fair, grinning like a fool. Her words wove a warmth I hadn't felt in days, a reminder that connection could come from unexpected places. Before I left, she pressed a slice of apple pie in my hands, wrapped in foil, her smile soft.
Driving back, I passed my parents' street, their house aglow with golden light, silhouettes moving behind the windows like actors in a play I wasn't part of. Laughter drifted faintly, the clink of glasses, the life I'd been written out of. I didn't stop. Back home, I lit a fire in the small stove, its crackle filling the silence. The pie sat on my table, its crust golden, its scent a faint echo of holidays past. It wasn't the feast I'd grown up with, no crowded table or bickering over recipes, but it was enough. For the first time, I felt the weight of their absence lighten, replaced by a quiet strength I hadn't named yet. The mountains outside stood unwavering, their peaks dusted with snow, and I sensed something stirring, a truth I'd kept hidden, even from myself. My family thought they knew me, but they'd never seen the engine I'd built beneath the surface. What came next would shake their world, a revelation that would force them to face the woman they'd dismissed. Stay with me to see how their carefully crafted lies crumbled under the weight of my truth. If stories of grit and quiet triumph speak to you, hit that subscribe button for more tales that uncover the strength beneath the surface, delivered fresh to your feed. The snow kept falling outside my Bozeman home, piling against the windows like a barrier between me and the world I'd been cast out of. My hands, still warm from the tractor repair, curled around the mug of cider Mrs. Callahan had given me, its steam rising like a faint promise of comfort. But my mind drifted back, unbidden, to the years that shaped the ache I carried now. Growing up in a tidy Bozeman suburb, our house was a study of perfection, all crisp lawns and polished silverware, a stage for my family's carefully curated image. My mother, Judith, was the director, arranging every detail, napkins folded just so, her smile practiced for neighbors' eyes. Dad, Warren, a city surveyor, was quieter, his pride buried in spreadsheets and municipal plans. Eliza, my younger sister, was their masterpiece, born with a grace that seemed scripted, her every step a performance. Ballet recitals, debate club, a smile that won hearts without effort. I was the flaw in their design, the gear that wouldn't mesh. Loud when they wanted soft, stubborn when they craved compliance. I found solace under the hood of a neighbor's old Chevy at 14, my fingers learning the language of bolts and spark plugs. When 16, I bought that toolbox, red and gleaming, with money scraped from mowing lawns. When Mom found it, her rage was a storm. She smashed it with a hammer, her voice a whip, declaring it unfit for a girl meant for better things. Dad stood silent, his eyes on the floor, as my dream splintered with the lock. That moment carved a line between us, one I spent years trying to erase. I'd show up for Sunday dinners, grease scrubbed from my nails, offering stories of rebuilt engines or a new certification, hoping for a nod, a spark of pride. But their eyes always slid to Eliza, her college degree, her brief stint as a local news anchor, her effortless charm. When I chose trade school over college, Mom's lips tightened, her word respectable, a blade she wielded often. Dad asked if fixing trucks was safe, his tone more doubt than concern. No one visited the shop where I became lead mechanic. No one asked about the fleet I managed or the late nights I spent mastering fuel injection systems. Eliza's social media posts, her in sundresses, sipping wine, lit up their phones with hearts and praise, while my milestones went unnoticed. I didn't resent her, not truly. She was just the mirror they chose to look into. Still, I tried to belong. I'd bring flowers for Mom on her birthday, fix Dad's truck without being asked, even sent Eliza money when her apartment lease fell through. No questions, no strings. But their dismissal was a tide, relentless, pulling me under until that Thanksgiving call confirmed what I'd always feared. I was family by blood, not by choice. The toolbox they'd shattered wasn't just metal. It was the first piece of a dream they refused to see. Now, sitting in my small house, the fire crackling in the stove, I felt that old wound pulse, but with it came a clarity. I'd built something they couldn't imagine, not just with wrenches, but with a mind they'd never bothered to know. What lay ahead would force them to see it, a truth so bright it would burn through their lies. Stay with me to witness how the woman they scorned became the one they couldn't ignore. If stories of resilience and hidden strength move you, hit that subscribe button for more tales that reveal the power beneath the surface, delivered fresh to your feed. The fire in my Bozeman stove flickered, casting shadows across the walls of my small house, each one a quiet reminder of the life I built beyond the reach of my family's judgment. The sting of their rejection lingered, but beneath it, a deeper truth pulsed, one I'd guarded like a blueprint tucked away in a locked drawer. At 23, I'd been a mechanic barely scraping by, my paycheck swallowed by rent and tools, my nights spent under the glow of a shop lamp wrestling with a rusted Kenworth engine. One evening, the shop radio crackled with a finance podcast, its host droning about index funds and compound interest, words as foreign to me as a new language. Something about it hooked me, a spark igniting in the grease-stained corners of my mind. I drove to the Bozeman Library the next day, my boots leaving faint dirt tracks on the polished floor, and pulled a book called The Simple Path to Wealth from the shelf. I devoured it in one weekend, its pages a map to a world I'd never been invited into. I read 4 more books, each one peeling back the mystery of money, showing me how to make it grow, steady and sure, like a well-tuned engine. At 23, I opened a brokerage account with $800, every cent I could spare after skipping new work gloves that winter. I bought my first share of a logistics company, one whose trucks I'd repaired, feeling a quiet thrill, like I'd claimed a piece of something bigger than myself. The habit took root, fierce and unyielding. I woke at 4:30 a.m., before the Montana dawn, to study market trends on a secondhand laptop. I took side jobs, fixing snowplows, rebuilding generators, pouring every extra dollar into my portfolio. By 28, I bought my house, a fixer-upper with sagging floors and a furnace that groaned like an old friend. I rebuilt it myself, each nail and pipe a testament to my refusal to break. Every dollar saved on contractors went into Vanguard funds, into shares of companies I understood, their gears as familiar as the ones I turned in the shop. Last month, my investments crossed $2.5 million, a number that felt like a secret I whispered only to myself. I didn't flaunt it. No new truck, no flashy coat. My pickup still rumbled with 250,000 miles, my jacket patched at the elbows. The money wasn't the point. It was the proof, the quiet roar of a life I'd built without permission. I kept it hidden, not from shame, but from knowing how my family would twist it. They'd never asked about my work, my certifications, my crew of 7 mechanics who called me boss. If they knew about the money, they'd see only dollar signs, not the woman who'd earned them. The thought of their sudden interest, their grasping hands, tightened my chest like a seized piston. But that secret was a spark, waiting to ignite. Soon it would flare into something my family couldn't ignore,
a truth that would crash into their carefully curated world. What came next would test everything I'd built, forcing me to choose between the life I'd made and the family who'd never seen it. Stay with me to see how the woman they dismissed stood taller than their lies. If stories of grit and hidden strength light a fire in you, hit that subscribe button for more tales that uncover the power beneath the surface, delivered fresh to your feed. The Montana winter tightened its grip on Bozeman, the snow piling high against my garage where I knelt beneath a flatbed truck, wrestling a stubborn alternator into place. My hands, slick with grease, moved with the certainty of years spent mastering machines, but my mind churned, still raw from the Thanksgiving betrayal. A car's engine growled in my driveway, followed by the sharp slam of doors. I wiped my hands on a rag, stepped into the biting December air, and froze. My parents, Judith and Warren, stood there, their faces taut with something like shame, while Eliza's eyes burned with a fury I hadn't expected. Mom clutched a tin of oat milk cookies, her smile brittle, as if it could mend what they'd broken. Dad shifted on his heels, his coat too crisp for my gravel-strewn yard.
Eliza stepped forward, her voice sharp enough to cut through the cold. They'd come because of Nathan, her tech entrepreneur boyfriend, who dined at their table again, his words unraveling the lies Eliza had spun. He'd told them I'd trained him years ago when he was a nervous kid in my shop, barely able to hold a wrench. More than that, he owed me his life. During a late-night repair, a jack had slipped, nearly crushing him under a rig's axle. I'd yanked him clear, my hands steady when his weren't, my voice calm when his shook. He'd also seen my spreadsheets, the ones I'd shown him to teach him the difference between reckless stock bets and patient wealth building. He'd blurted out my secret, $2.5 million, tucked away in accounts no one in my family had ever asked about. Their faces now told the story. Regret, yes, but something greedier beneath it. Mom's voice wavered as she offered an apology, her words soft but hollow, like a poorly tuned engine. Dad muttered about their mistake, his eyes avoiding mine, fixed on the snow at his feet. Eliza's anger flared brighter, her words accusing me of hiding my worth, as if I'd betrayed her by not flaunting it. Then came the real reason for their visit, the one I'd sensed like a faint oil leak before it spreads. Nathan was launching an auto tech startup, a venture to revolutionize parts distribution, and they wanted me to invest $500,000, a number tossed out like a challenge. Eliza spoke of partnership, of combining strengths, but her eyes gleamed with the same hunger I'd seen in clients angling for a discount. The air in my driveway grew heavy, the silence thick as the snow piling around us. I leaned against the garage door, my arms crossed, feeling the weight of their sudden interest. They hadn't come for me, not really, just for what I could offer now that they knew. The betrayal wasn't new, but its clarity was, sharp as the edge of a freshly cut key. I could have opened my door, let them in, let their apologies smooth over the years of dismissal. But something in me hardened, a resolve as unyielding as the steel I worked with. What happened next would draw a line they couldn't cross, a moment where I'd choose myself over their grasping hands. Stay with me to see how I turn their opportunism into a mirror, forcing them to face the woman they never truly seen. If stories of standing tall against betrayal ignite something in you, hit that subscribe button for more tales of grit and truth, delivered fresh to your feed. The Bozeman wind howled through the pines, rattling the windows of my small house as I stood in the aftermath of my family's visit, their footsteps fading into the snow. The tin of oatmeal cookies sat untouched on my kitchen table, a hollow gesture beside the gifts I'd bought for them, now gathering dust. Their words, apologies laced with the pitch for Nathan's startup, echoed in my mind, each syllable revealing the truth I'd long avoided.
They hadn't come to mend what they'd broken. They'd come for the $2.5 million they now knew I held, for the expertise they'd once dismissed
as a stain. I paced the creaking floorboards, my boots heavy with the weight of years spent seeking their approval. The memory of my shattered toolbox at 16 flared, Mom's hammer striking not just metal, but the girl I'd been, her dreams deemed unworthy. Eliza's fury, accusing me of hiding my worth, stung less than her silence all those years, when she'd let me be the shadow to her spotlight. Dad's averted eyes, Mom's trembling voice, they weren't here for me, but for what I could buy them. A stake in Nathan's venture, a chance to bask in reflected success. I stopped pacing, my gaze falling on the toolbox in the corner, its new red gleam a quiet rebellion against that old wound. I thought of Tessa, the 19-year-old apprentice at my shop, her hands eager but unsteady, her eyes bright with the same hunger I'd felt at her age. I'd spent hours teaching her to diagnose a faulty injector, to trust her instincts when a rig's hum sounded off. She called me Chief, her grin wide when she got it right. And in her, I saw the girl my family never did. A girl building something real, piece by piece. Their visit had cracked open a truth. I'd spent too long waiting for a seat at a table that never wanted me. The $500,000 they wanted wasn't just money. It was a test, a lure to pull me back into their orbit, to make me perform for their approval once more. But I was done. I crossed to the window, the Montana mountains stark against the gray sky, their unyielding presence a mirror to the resolve hardening in my chest. I wouldn't invest in Nathan's startup, wouldn't buy my way into their world. My life, my shop, my home, my portfolio was mine, built with calloused hands and early mornings, not for their validation, but for my own. Tessa's progress, the way she tightened her first bolt without wobbling, felt like a legacy worth more than their fleeting praise. The silence in my house wasn't empty anymore. It was full, brimming with the clarity of boundaries drawn at last. I didn't need their apologies or their table. I had my own, built from steel and sweat, where Tessa and others like her could sit, learn, and grow. What came next would be my own making, a life free from the weight of their expectations. Stay with me to see how I carved out a space where worth wasn't begged for, but claimed. A story of standing tall against those who tried to shrink me. If tales of resilience and self-made strength resonate with you, hit that subscribe button for more stories that cut through the noise, delivered fresh to your feed. The Bozeman winter softened into spring, the snow melting into rivulets that carved paths through my gravel drive, each one a quiet echo of the change stirring within me. My house, once a refuge from my family's rejection, now hummed with a purpose I hadn't named until the frost began to lift. Months had passed since that December confrontation, the tin of oatmeal cookies long discarded, its sweetness soured by the opportunism it masked. My parents' faces, pale with regret, and Eliza's blazing eyes faded into memory, replaced by the steady rhythm of my days. I'd heard from them only once since, a hesitant text from Mom, a single line about hoping I was well, unanswered. Eliza sent a card for my birthday, her handwriting stiff, mentioning Nathan's startup faltering without my investment. I set it aside, unopened, next to the journal and chess set I'd finally stored in a closet. The silence wasn't bitter. It was a clearing, a space where I could breathe. I'd spent years chasing a place at their table, bending myself to fit their polished frame. But now I stood outside it, my boots planted firm on ground I'd claimed as my own. My shop became a beacon, its bays alive with the clang of tools and the low hum of engines. Tessa, my apprentice, grew steadier, her hands finding the rhythm of a torque wrench. her questions sharper, her confidence blooming like the wildflowers that dotted Bozeman's hills. I saw myself in her, the girl who had once hid the toolbox under her bed, and I poured into her what no one had given me: time, patience, belief. She wasn't the only one. A local trade school reached out, asking me to lead a workshop on diesel systems, and I said yes, surprising myself. The room filled with young women, their eyes wide, some clutching worn notebooks, others in borrowed coveralls. I showed them how to trace a wiring fault, how to listen to an engine stutter and hear its story. Their nods, their quiet gasps of understanding built something in me, a bridge from my past to a future I hadn't dared imagine. One evening, after a workshop, a girl named Leela lingered, her braid frayed, her hands smudged with grease. She slipped a note into my toolbox, folded small, its words simple. "You showed me I don't have to be perfect to be enough." I held that note in my truck, the engine idling, the Montana sky bruising purple over the mountains. It wasn't just Leela. The community center invited me to speak on financial literacy, and I stood before a crowd of retirees and single mothers, sharing how I'd turned $800 into $2.5 million, not with luck, but with discipline, with mornings spent studying markets instead of sleeping. They leaned forward, scribbling notes, their faces lit with the possibility that wealth wasn't reserved for those in suits or skyscrapers. I didn't speak of my family, but I felt their absence, a shadow that no longer darkened my path. My backyard, once a patch of dirt, now held apple trees I'd planted, their branches budding with the promise of fruit. I'd sit there at dusk, my old pickup parked nearby, its dents a map of my endurance. Jada, my friend since we were kids, would pull up in her rattling Jeep, bringing coffee and stories, her laughter, a reminder that some bonds held without needing to be proven. One night, as we sat on my porch, the air thick with the scent of blooming sage, she asked if I'd ever go back to my family. I looked at the mountains, their peaks steady against the fading light, and shook my head. Not unless they could see me without the money, without the leverage they tried to claim. She nodded, tossing a pebble into the yard, and said nothing more. That silence was a gift, a space where I didn't need to explain or justify. I'd stopped trying to fix the engine of their approval, stopped pouring my energy into a machine that never ran right. Instead, I built something new, a life where worth wasn't measured by invitations or applause, but by the quiet strength of showing up day after day for myself and those who saw me. Tessa's first solo repair, Leela's note, the workshop crowd's questions, they were my table now, set with honesty and grit. The truth I learned was simple yet profound, a seed planted in the wreckage of that Thanksgiving exclusion. Your worth isn't something you beg for, it's something you carry, forged in the choices you make when no one's watching. Like a well-tuned engine, life runs smoothest when you trust your own design, when you build with intention, not for applause, but for the steady hum of your own heart. To anyone listening feeling like they don't belong, know this: you are enough, not because of what you have, but because of who you choose to be. Keep that close, let it guide you, and you'll find your own table, surrounded by those who see you clearly. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe for more tales of resilience and truth delivered fresh to your feed. The stars blinked above Bozeman, and I leaned back, my hands still carrying the faint scent of oil, my heart lighter than it had ever been. This was my place, my peace, and it was enough.